So I know you, when the first time I met you, which I can't remember, I guess maybe you had come to maybe one of our galas or something. And I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, you're so positive, you're so happy, you're so upbeat, and you're just like a really contagious, happy person. And then when I found out about your story, I was shocked. I was like, how
Yeah.
can this person be such a positive person and have gone through so much in his life? And then I started thinking about your passion for Embrace Grace and Embrace Legacy. Like it all connects and makes sense. Like if your dad maybe would have had more of a close knit support system as a single dad, if your mom maybe would have had a close knit support system as a single mom, maybe
Yeah.
things might have looked differently. Who knows? But maybe so. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah. I will. So I've learned to condense kind of the big points of my story into a couple of lines, but then I'll help unpack a little bit of this. So my dad was a pastor, and he wasn't faithful to my mom. In fact, I've heard the story. I was young. I think I was maybe 2 at the time, but during a Sunday night service, I believe 3 men, while he was on the platform, came and confronted him for not being faithful
Wow.
with their wives and with his
Wow.
wife. And so that kind of led down this crazy path. And ultimately, my mom, she did her best, but she ultimately ended up committing suicide. Now, this was a few years later, several years later, when I was living with her as a single mom. So I came home. I was in high school, and I found my mom after she had taken her own life. And I found out after that she had struggled with suicide multiple times. They just hadn't let me know as a family, and it probably wasn't. I didn't need to know. I was young at the time. And then ultimately after that, I didn't have a great relationship with my dad at that point. And after that, my dad ended up passing away of cancer. And so there's a lot of things to unpack in the middle of all of that, and a lot we do unpack in the Embrace Legacy
Mm-hmm.
curriculum. But the point is this: is as simple as lots of things happen to me, but lots of things happen to everybody. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing that's so interesting, and it's the thing that helps define who we become. Is the circumstances that happen to us try to define who we become, because they try to dictate, okay, because this happened to you, or your mom did this, or your dad did this, that means that this is the path that you should most likely be going down. This is the path that statistically you should be going down. And it's not a great path unless you have a perfect mom or a perfect dad, of which there are none. Except, well, there is one. There's one called God, Jesus in heaven. Um, and I remember after my mom had committed suicide, the only way I can um, describe this is I felt like I got shot with a shotgun in the chest. And again, I don't know what that felt like, but it just felt like somebody took a bat or took something really hard to my chest. It just knocked me back. And I didn't have a relationship with my dad at the time. I was living with my mom. I didn't want to be with my dad. In fact, I didn't end up living with my dad after that. I lived with some other family. And I remember a verse in the Bible that talked about how he came to give us life. God came to give us life and life more abundantly. And then there's a verse that talks about, but we have a choice to make, and we can either choose life or we can choose death. And God says, hey, well, choose life. I'm giving you the answer ahead of time. Choose life. And it was so clear to me in that moment that I had a choice, and I didn't want to live in between. I could live in between and be upset and be frustrated and have a chip on my shoulder because this happened to me, or I could make a decision to just choose life and to go after it and to say, all these things that have happened to me, I believe those were the enemy's plans to get me to do something that he wanted, not what God wanted. So that must mean that what God has for me is so much better, and I'm just going to trust him. Yeah, it doesn't look like right now I have a reason to trust him, but I'm going to trust him because it's better to live that way than to live the opposite. And in doing that, God has truly shown himself faithful in my life time and time again. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard for me to not be happy when I think about all of the things that I believe God's done for me. And I sit back with people sometimes and we start processing, oh, this happened to your mom or your dad. And I start to think, oh, maybe that was bad. I've gotten so far past it because God has proved himself so faithful time and time again, I have so much to be thankful for that I don't have a reason to be upset or to be sad. And don't get me wrong, there's still times where I'm sad. I miss my mom, I miss my dad, but overwhelmingly in my life, I have so much to be thankful for. And I really believe that no matter what life we came from, no matter what's happened to us in our past, no matter what happens to us in our future, we have that choice to make. That choice of, are we going to choose to look at what we've been blessed with, or are we going to choose to look at the tough things that have happened to us? And I think we have this choice to make how we're going to approach those things. And that choice, I believe, really determines the path that we go down. And so for me, I had a choice to make. Was I going to take God at his word and trust him and choose to find the things that I could be thankful for in my life? Or was I going to always look through the lens of having a chip on my shoulder because something bad had happened to me? So, Amy, to answer that question, I think that's why. And over years of just practicing that, I think it developed in me this joy, this positivity, this hope that no matter what happens, I can walk through it because I'm not walking through it alone.